Let's take a look at this Samyang 12mm f2 lens for Fuji X cameras. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. And in this video let's take a look at this Samyang 12mm f2 wide-angle lens for Fuji cameras. But first a disclaimer, this lens is not mine. This is on loan from Focus Nordic Finland. They represent Samyang here in Finland. And I'd like to say big thanks to Focus Nordic for letting me borrow this lens so I can make this video for you guys. This Samyang is one of those relatively new third-party AF lenses for Fuji cameras. The focal length obviously is 12mm, and that equals roughly to about 18mm on a full-frame camera. And the maximum aperture is relatively fast f2. This weighs in at about 225 grams with the included hood, and the filter size is 62mm. So this is relatively compact lens for a fast super wide, and it balances really nicely even on the X-T30, which is my camera. But I suppose the balance would be even nicer on some of the bigger Fuji cameras like the X-T3 or X-T4. But even this combo is really nice to handle and a pleasure to use. The exterior seems to be plastic, but the build quality still feels very good, and Samyang also claims weather sealing on this lens, so you should be able to continue shooting even in slight rain or something if your camera body is compatible. My camera is not weather sealed, so I have to be a little bit more careful than those of you who have a weather sealed Fuji camera body. Feature-wise, this is a pretty basic lens. There's only the wide and smooth focus by wire focus ring, but no other extras. But I really didn't miss anything except maybe the aperture ring, because pretty much every Fujinon lens has the aperture ring, and it's sort of one of the cornerstones of Fuji ergonomics, and that's why it would be nice if these third-party lenses also had it. The autofocus is really fast and silent, at least on the X-T30. However, I got a few more than usual misfocused frames with this combo. But I'm not quite sure if I can blame the lens or myself, because I got back to Fuji system only recently, and maybe I'm just not used to the Fuji autofocus yet, and I'm pretty spoiled by the excellent and easy to use Sony autofocus. So I don't want to make too big of an issue of this, and as a matter of fact, I'd like to hear your opinion. If you have this lens on your Fuji, let me know if you have any similar experiences with the autofocus. Optically, this lens is quite good. The sharpness, especially in the mid part of the frame, is really superb, already wide open. But once you stop down a little bit, you get a little bit more even sharpness across the frame. And I'd say the sweet spot is from about f5.6 to f11. But even f16 looks pretty good to me, and I can't see too much diffraction there. So if you, for whatever reason, need lots and lots of depth of field, you should be able to shoot at f16 with really good results. But even wide open, this lens is really usable in those low light situations where you need that wide open aperture. There are no distortions, and I suspect there's some sort of software correction going on. But I think the main thing is that in the final picture you can't see any distortions, and I could not see any image degradation because of the electronic corrections. There is a moderate amount of vignetting visible, especially wide open, but I suspect that is also software corrected to some degree. But nonetheless, I never found the vignetting to be any kind of a problem in any of my pictures. There is a tiny amount of chromatic aberrations visible towards the corners of the picture, but that is so minor that it's hardly noticeable and very easy to correct in post. This little Samyang also handles backlight pretty well. I could not see any major flare or reflections in my pictures. The worst case scenario is when the sun or any bright light is just outside of the frame, and then you can see this veiling flare in your picture. But that same situation is typically a problem for many super wide angle lenses. Super wide angles are usually not very good for tight close-ups, and this Samyang 12mm is not any kind of an exception. The minimum focusing distance is 0.2 meters, which is quite a short distance, but because of the really wide angle of view, the subject still remains quite small in the picture. This kind of a super wide angle is usually used for architecture, landscapes and special effects, but you can of course use this for street and whatever photography if you just like a super wide angle. And some of you may want to ask, what about astrophotography? Well, astrophotography is really not my thing. And also at this time of the year, when I'm recording this video, mid-May, the daylight time is already so long here in Helsinki that it's not really possible to do astrophotography. The next possible time would be maybe in 3 or 4 months. So no astrophotography in this video. This little Samyang would also be a great vlogging lens if your camera happens to have IBIS. My X-T30 does not have IBIS, so I had to put it on a tripod to show you how the footage looks through the Samyang 12mm f2 lens. At the time of recording this video, the price for this lens seems to be around 350 euros or dollars, give or take, depending on your location. And for that money, I think this is a really good value if you're looking for a relatively fast super wide angle for your Fuji X camera. In my opinion, the upsides are the optical quality, build quality and the weather sealing. And I can't see any major downsides, but I wish it had the aperture ring. I hope you enjoyed this little review. I hope this was helpful, and if you liked this really a lot, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below if you don't live in Finland. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.